This is Between Two Wise Trees, episode 4 now. For we made it 4 episodes in somehow. I don't know, but here we are. We've got two more insane films to bring to you today, and um, I should probably make it clear. What we've been doing is each week we've both been choosing a film to bring, and then we discuss. Except for when we have guests, we'll let them choose as well. Which we might have another one hopefully soon in the future, maybe even the next episode. We'll see. But that's how we've been going about it. But today we've got two more films. I've brought Captain Underpants: The First Epic Adventure by DreamWorks from 2017, and I just really wanted to watch it. So I'm like, why don't we talk about it on the podcast? Because it's a goofy movie. So I was like, sure, let's do that one. And if you don't know what Captain Underpants is, why? And secondly, it's good. Go watch it. And we're going to talk about it anyway. So if you don't want spoilers and you just want to know what it's about, definitely recommend it. And we'll get more into it here soon. You want to say what movie you've brought?
Uh, I brought the Dirties by Matt Johnson, and it's like a found footage movie, and I loved it when I first saw it, and I loved it again, and yeah, so that's about it.
Yeah. So again, kind of like probably even more so than last week. These films are just completely opposites. Like, there's nothing similar about these movies. Um, I I don't know if it's because I mean this time it's just I really wanted to watch this movie, but you've always got something interesting to bring to the table. Most of the time, movies I've not seen, sometimes I've not even heard of. So, which this was a movie I've never heard of before. So we'll start with again, like usual. You've probably got a more interesting film to talk about, so we'll start with Captain Underpants because it's Captain Underpants, and it's it's such a it's such a goofy movie. Like, it's kind of here's the thing about it, and we'll get into more of our overall thoughts here in a sec. But the thing about the Captain Underpants movie is, like, first of all, obviously it's for a very specific audience of people. It's for kids. It's Captain
Yeah.
Underpants. It was always meant for kids. The series was made for kids. It's based off of a series of books by Dave Pickley, and I grew up with them. I read them all. I loved them because they were just the Captain Underpants books were always just completely stupid, dumb, ADHD fun. Like, that's always
Mhm.
what they were. Like, they thrive off of the toilet humor. That's what they were always about. It's one of the only series like that gets away with it because it's always been about that. Uh, from my point of view. Whereas like other movies, it's forced in. Other kids animated movies like anything by Illumination or anything like that. The older DreamWorks stuff and those studios always forced in the childish toilet humor because it was popular, and for a long time was popular. It's kind of waning away now though, and I think this is kind of the crux of like that style of humor in kids movies. Um, like overall, because like obviously that kind of humor will exist in any movie, specifically animated, but it will exist in any movie to an extent. There will be jokes like it, but it's the emphasis on it that has changed over time. And I think this movie was like probably like the last straw for like uh, kids animated movies doing that. Um, Also, I apologize if we hear yelling out in the halls. I live in college, so yeah. But yeah, so I think this was like probably like the last movie to ever, probably one of the last movies to ever do the style of humor that a lot of kids animated movies did. But this one was about that, so it made sense and it fit the vibe of the film, and it just made sense. Like it made sense to do that because this is something we brought up in our first episode. We were talking about like faithful adaptations, and we were talking about the Peanuts movie and how we kind of think that that's probably one of the best adaptations of like a series to an animated movie. And this I kind of put on the same spectrum. It's really faithfully done to the original style of the series. The writing as well. I actually think the writing is even better than the books, and I think they did that purposefully. Um, but just like it's such a faithful adaptation in the same way where like and it all boils down to the style, right? Because like with the Peanuts movie, that movie worked because they didn't try to over exaggerate everything and make force pop icons and references into the movie. It was a Peanuts movie through and through with an original Peanuts story focused around the characters that made sense. There were one or two blemishes for sure, but overall it stayed very faithful to the style that the original series was portraying. And this is the same kind of deal with this movie because we've got like, I mean, not only is it like maybe not quite the same because like we do have the famous the voice actors and stuff, but I think they fit the characters fairly well and they elevate the humor in a certain way. Would it have been more charming to have child actors? Yeah, probably, but it also might have made it more annoying. So I think they did a fine job with the casting, but yeah, just overall, it's just the humor, and the style of writing that fits so perfectly with what the series is that makes it work for me. Like if it were like if this were any other movie, if this were an original movie, I would probably not like it. Not gonna lie, not nearly as much at least. But because I know what it's based on and I grew up with it, it makes it way more special. And also, just like a lot of the other original writing is super funny. Like there's so many quotable lines in this movie for no reason. Um, even ones that aren't like directly tied to the original series. Like they're just good writing. Um, I always bring up because I see memes about this on TikTok. Forged from the molten plastic of Shindong, China. Like,
That was a
where
good
did
one.
they come up with that? I don't know. It's so out of left field. Like that whole scene just kind of happens so quickly.
Yeah.
And yeah, I just love the the humor they got away with in that movie, like that they were able to do because they have the original toilet humor style because that's what the series was always about. But they also just have like some legitimately good writing, some legitimately good, clever jokes in there too. So that's what really made this movie work for me, and why I found it special and just kind of like it's kind of um I don't know if you'll agree with me on this, but it puts me at this in the same like childlike sort of mindset that the SpongeBob movie does. Definitely not as much as the SpongeBob movie because that movie was like it's like it was even well, first of all, it's just even more well made and well written and stuff. But it puts me in the same kind of
Yeah.
like just like enjoyment uh that the SpongeBob movie did because I just get to kind of relive my childhood through this movie. And that's why I liked it so much is that I can just kind of vibe. I don't have to worry about anything. Like it's okay to just it's okay to just like be a kid sometimes and find things funny. Like even if they're childish, even if they're immature because I mean, that's if we lose that part of ourselves then what joy do we have to find in life with adult things? Like that's at least from my perspective on it. So overall, as you could tell, I'm a pretty big fan of this movie. I think it was really well done. Um, and yeah, just overall, really enjoyed it. Do you have any overall thoughts on it that you want to bring up?
Um, yeah, about the comparison with like the SpongeBob movie. Um, yeah, I definitely see the comparisons because like both movies are supposed to just like bring up sort of that sort of childhood feeling in you, and whereas the SpongeBob movie is doing it with like more than just toilet humor. This movie, yeah, it's like it's bringing out that sort of childlike wonder with specifically toilet humor,
Yeah, definitely.
and for the most part, I think it works. I think it's a fine movie. I enjoyed it, but it just yeah, I don't know. As far as like comparing it to the SpongeBob movie, I just never quite think it reaches the heights of the SpongeBob movie in that sense.
No, of course not. Um, but that's because like the SpongeBob movie had so much more going for it too.
Hmm.
It's still Steven Hillenburg, and with his whole crew and their writing style, like obviously the original Captain Underpants books don't hold a candle to the original seasons of SpongeBob. It's not the same. It's not the same story.
Yeah.
Because SpongeBob can be enjoyed in a more universal sense because SpongeBob was never toilet humor.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, for just from that perspective, I kind of see like the similarities between the two. But I definitely don't think it's even close to the SpongeBob movie. I
Mm.
just think it kind of brings out that same kind of emotion or reaction from me when I
Yeah.
watch it. Um, so yeah, so a couple things about it, um, do you have any first off, I want to know like what's your favorite like scene or joke in the movie because there's so many good options like just out of pocket scenes that are just so easily memorable. Are there any that that you really think are funny?
Ah, man. I think the only joke I like genuinely remember is when they have the whoopee cushion opera, and at the end of it, all that text comes on screen of like
That was
this all the
funny.
reviews. Yeah, that
That
was
was
a good one.
funny.
I
That was
like
really.
that one.
I was gonna bring that up too. That's really funny. Like, just like delightfully humorous. It's like the
Yeah.
Rolling Stones and stuff.
Mm.
That's a really dang good joke.
Yeah.
Um, there's a lot of good ones for me. I mean, obviously, I'm always gonna bring up the Mother Three joke, but the way I don't know why that's one thing I noticed this time when I was watching it. There are so many scenes that just remind me of something else. Like, of course, there's the
Mm.
Mother Three sunflower field. There was a scene where Professor Poopy Pants and Melvin are freaking they're like getting the leftovers from the kitchen. I'm like, Jesse, it's Walter White. Uh, and so there was like stuff like that, and there's just so many moments that I like. This feels like the kind of movie that you get a bunch of friends together in a room and you just like you joke about and you laugh at like for an hour and a half and just really enjoy yourselves. Um,
Yeah.
that's definitely the way I see it. That's definitely where you're gonna get the most enjoyment out of it, as like as more of an adult. I cannot imagine what it must have been like for an adult taking their child to this movie though in the theater. Like, oof. It would have you would have either like totally been on board with it and be kind of just vibing with the kids, or you would be in absolute despair. So,
Mm.
um, but yeah, um, so yeah, there's a lot of good quotable moments that are memorable to me. One thing I really noticed this time when I watched the movie is has a lot more. It does a lot more experimental art styles and animation than I
Mm.
remembered. Like, there's so many scenes where it just like changes styles for a couple of minutes just to do something unique, and I think that also plays into like the childlike, imaginative I like ideas of it. Like when they're talking about like they have the whole scene with the puppets, which is completely unnecessary, but it kind of adds to like the imagination of it, like just the over exaggeration of like what how you view everything as a child, like everything is like the end of the world or it's the best thing ever.
Hmm.
um that's just kind of how it is as a kid. As you grow older it becomes more mundane, it becomes
Yeah.
more like life just kind of becomes the same, but everything is important as a kid. And
Mm.
I think they do that really well. Another one of my favorite jokes actually is in the movie is early in the movie when they have to go to they have to go to like the science fair on Saturday, and they both wake up in the morning and they're like singing, and then the second that they remember they have to go, just everything just like immediately stops. It starts raining, like nature is fighting itself.
Yeah.
It's so over exaggerated, but like that's what makes that funny. Um, yeah, just I like stuff like that where they just honestly just like the animation and just in general, like it just looks good. Like the the characters all have they all look like their graphic novel counterparts. They look
Yeah.
very similar to the book versions of them, which is good. But also just like the expressiveness of them, especially Mr. Krupp. Mr. Krupp is freaking hilarious, man.
Mm.
Like, there's just so many scenes where he's just like he's so overly exaggerated with his evilness. Like, it's hilarious to me. Just like it's honestly like remember like the principal from that middle school movie where he's just like it's just like overly evil for no reason, but that's why
Yeah.
it's kind of just funny and kind of like it. Um so yeah, I just like the animation. That's something I never noticed before, but I just really like what they do with the animation. There's this couple scenes where they do it like crayon drawings as well. It's just like crayon drawn animation.
Mm.
Um it's just like, yeah, that makes sense. That's how it evokes the origins of the series, but also evokes like the personalities of the characters as well. So I think it's a very competently well made movie, and I think that the best part is the animation and just the humor because that's what it thrives off of. And I think that's all it needed for me to be good. Um,
Mhm.
Everything else about it, there's nothing too special happening here, obviously.
Yeah.
Like it's still a very by the books animated kids movie that I really think the pacing hurts it so bad because like it feels like half the movie goes by and we're just kind of vibing with George and Harold and they're just
Mm.
kind of like making comics and talking about how they hypnotize Mr. Krupp into becoming Captain Underpants and stuff and all that happens and it's like fine
Mhm.
and then they bring in Professor Poopy Pants, and then everything happens at once. And I feel like it gets way too quick, way too fast, and then the
Yeah.
movie's over. So I feel like that the structuring of the movie definitely hurts it, and that's probably my biggest issue with it is that it just moves too fast as it gets more into the film. And
Yeah.
I'm still not emotionally involved with any of the characters. It's not like I actually care that Mr. Krupp is lonely. Like, frick that guy, I don't care. like, um, so yeah, that was there's nothing again. I don't want to sound like this. I don't want to make it seem like this is like one of the best movies, one of the best animated movies ever, because it's not. It's just very fun, turn your brain off kind of movie, which I like those kind of movies a lot of time. And this one feels like a pretty competent one for kids.
Mm.
So that's what I appreciate about it. That's what I liked. I'm trying to think. Also, I'll, mm, how do you feel about the? This is another movie for me where I think it kind of gets away with using more pop music and stuff, because first of all, I think the choices they made are not they're not average pop music choices for animated movies. It's not like they didn't pick anything like Aha, Take on Me or anything like that. They chose music that fit the scene.
Yeah.
Um, so, how do you feel about that? Because I think it did it pretty well. It didn't annoy me. I actually think it might have been better than doing original music, but I don't know how you feel about that.
Um, well, I'm gonna be honest. I don't remember any of the music.
Yeah, I don't
I
really.
don't remember half of this movie, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm sure, but it's not like it's infinitely memorable. Really, it's just like a few scenes that
Mhm.
are gonna stick with you more because they're funny.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Just I don't really remember any specific music tracks either. I just remember that it always felt like they fit the scenes well.
Yeah.
Um, for me personally, at least, I thought it worked out pretty well. Um, there was another thing I was gonna bring up as well. It was the um. I talked about kind of like how I like. Oh, I remember now. So it's very faithful adaptation, as I mentioned, to the original series. But
Mhm.
like not just faithful in the style, but like just the details. Like there are so many scenes, especially like towards the beginning when they're in like the city for the first time with Captain Underpants. There's if you actually just like look, there's so many references to the original books if you're like a fan, if you've read them.
Mhm.
Like the fact that they included the everything but fabric softener store is still like the best joke to me. Like they so casually worked that into the background and they really didn't need to. Like this is definitely a movie where you could watch it a good number of times and see little details like that, um, that you wouldn't otherwise appreciate, especially if like you haven't if you don't know the books. And it's not that's not a huge deal. That shouldn't impact like the movie at large. But it does make the experience more enjoyable if you have read the books, which I have as a kid. Um,
Yeah.
so there's just small details like that, and I feel like a lot of those things will go unsung, and people will gloss over them because they're not important to the movie. And if you're not a fan, you don't understand anyway. So, but I think that those kind of things are worth praising because most other movies wouldn't do that. They wouldn't go out of their way to make a funny joke reference to the classic series in the background. So, I don't know. That's just something I appreciate about it. Also, we got to talk about Weird Al Yankovic. Kind of hard with that credits theme.
Yeah, I like that a lot. That's the one song I do remember.
Yeah, it's pretty. Well, I think that's because Weird Al Yankovic. So, and it's
Yeah.
an original song for the movie. So that definitely that definitely was good. That's a memorable song from the movie. But it's
Mhm.
also Weird Al Yankovic, so you expect it.
Yeah.
Still no SpongeBob movie soundtrack though. That's for sure.
Oh no.
Yeah, I don't know if anything will ever top the SpongeBob movie. Which, by the way, they announced another SpongeBob movie. They probably announced five, so
Yeah. It's a
that
shame.
series it's dead to me. I don't care about SpongeBob anymore. Classic
Yeah.
SpongeBob, where it's at. But anyway, Captain Underpants is, I think, a pretty good movie. We'll go over our ratings real quick. I gave it an 8 out of 10 because I really just there's just nothing that wrong with it other than like the structural issues and overall just very basic story. I just feel
Hmm.
like there's nothing about it that's like annoying or really like that really like hinders the experience for being like enjoyable for me.
Yeah.
So that's why I gave it an 8 out of 10. Nothing incredible by animation standards, but very competently made movie, especially for kids.
Hmm. Yeah, no, I gave it like a 6 out of 10, but like thinking about it now, it's like closer to a 5, but
Your
it's
opinion got
enjoyable.
worse.
What?
Your opinion got worse. I thought it was gonna get better.
No, it's just I don't know. I just don't remember like a good amount of it, and
Mm,
I just remember watching it and thinking like this would be great if I read the comics as a kid, but
yeah.
I never did. I'd only ever seen the comics sitting on a bookshelf, and it's enjoyable. I think it's good at what it's doing, but I just found myself kind of bored throughout half the runtime, and occasionally there'd be a good joke. I'd say, okay, that's pretty funny, and I appreciated the animation a lot and all the different styles, but it's just the whole thing's kind of an afterthought to me. But I'm gonna leave it at a 6 for now, but maybe I'll change it to a 5 down the road. I don't know.
Mhm. Yeah, no, that makes sense. Like, especially if you're not familiar, like, you're not gonna care, and that makes
Hmm.
sense. Like, I don't expect you to care.
Yeah.
But if you grew up with it, you're gonna like it. That's another thing, like, about the SpongeBob movie. Like, I feel like
Hmm.
that movie can be enjoyed even if you haven't watched SpongeBob as a kid.
Yeah.
Like, if you have like in intent to watch the movie and are actually paying attention and are recognizing the elements going into it, I think you can enjoy the SpongeBob movie whether you grew up with SpongeBob or not. So that's
Mhm.
that's another thing. That's why another reason why I like just the SpongeBob movie is really good and this movie is really not like incredibly special by animated movie standards. But
Mhm.
that's pretty much where I stand. It's I like it a lot. You probably won't care if you haven't grown up with it, but if you did, you're probably gonna like it. Um, so yeah, I think it's good. And I'll probably rewatch it again just for the Shindong China memes. So
Yeah.
and the Mother 3 references. Which if you don't get the Mother 3 references, don't worry, you're not missing out on much except for Mother 3. You should play that game. But we can move on to the Dirties now, which I'm not gonna lie, I found this movie extremely interesting, but I
Mhm.
didn't find it super engaging.
Yeah, see, I was always engaged, like just because I love how it's kind of the whole movie is also kind of like a love letter to cinema as well. There's so many just fun little details that you catch up on, like the characters constantly referencing movies, and I don't know. The two main leads just really do it for me. Like Matt Johnson and Owen, and it's just so funny. Like, I think its comedy elements go way harder than what it eventually turns into. Because admittedly, like, yeah, the transition from a sort of comedic kind of movie to a sort of a school shooter movie isn't insanely fleshed out, and a lot of that was generally just budgetary reasons. And yeah, if they continued that ending scene for way longer, then it would have went way harder. But again, it's like they were filming under such a tight budget, and the conditions in which they filmed with, like, yeah, they really weren't working with much. But for the most part, I thought it was so much fun, and God, I just ended up really falling in love with it.
Mhm. I think that's something we might disagree on actually, because I actually think the ending is really good, and I liked how they concluded the film.
Yeah.
It's a lot of the actually so that's really the main I think uh, topic to debate is
Hmm.
where does the line between comedy and seriousness, where is that drawn with a movie like this covering um such a sensitive topic? Because the movie, for all those who don't know, is about two guys who are making a movie about shooting up their the like bullies and stuff. And so for me, I think it's a really funny movie, a really dry. It's got really dry humor because of the topic at hand. Um, but I think the conclusion of the film is actually really well done, and I actually like the inconclusiveness of it, because
Hmm.
I feel like that kind of adds to the because in my opinion the main character of this movie is Matt Johnson, which I don't
Yeah.
think people would debate. It's kind of about his spiraling into his own thoughts, and
Hmm.
getting lost in fiction. And this is kind of my main praise and pet peeve of the movie is the characters themselves,
Hmm.
because I think all the characters in this movie are not that they're stereotypical, but they're not that far off from being real people. My
Hmm.
problem with it is that I feel like the portrayal of them isn't as well handled as it could have been, because obviously it's hard to say, because since it's a found footage movie, whether the movie can really truly be taken from Matt's perspective,
Hmm.
because it doesn't feel like it's supposed to be. I mean, obviously it's shot as a movie for like from his perspective, but
Hmm.
since we know what's actually happening, I feel like it's harder to take it that way. And obviously, like, we can see the spiral of descent of Matt Johnson as like one scene in particular that I think really well illustrates how his how he's portrayed and how his characters is
Hmm.
um decaying, is when I think it's like right before him and Owen get into a big fight. Is he's reading Columbine, I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure, and we don't know it at first. I kind of knew where it was going with that, but as soon as he sets it down on the desk and you can see what the book spine is, it's like that everything here is like, this is for real.
Hmm.
um what's going to happen, because you basically see him agreeing and finding some what's the word I'm looking for here, like he finds himself empathizing with the words being spoken in the book.
Yeah.
And that's basically like the main crux of the film is being so disconnected from reality
Hmm.
that you start to agree with people who are also disconnected from reality.
Hmm.
Um, and the reason I like and don't like it is because I feel like a, I think it's an accurate portrayal of this kind of like the mental health spiral of like becoming disconnected from reality. I think that that's done well, but I don't like the way that they use. I don't like the way that that Matt Johnson portrays himself. Like he's portrayed as like, oh, he's a big film nerd and he loves making movies and this is his
Hmm.
passion. And him and his best friend get bullied. They're the outcasts in the school, that kind of
Hmm.
thing. Um, and all that stuff you can follow that. It's pretty stereotypical, but it's understandable. But where to me it feels like, and I don't think this is the intention. I don't think that this is the intention at all. But from my
Hmm.
perspective, it almost feels like they're it's a fine line between they're blaming they're blaming cinema and they're blaming fiction for the problem, which I don't think is completely off base, but also they're not. I don't think Matt Johnson ever provides any like he never provides any other example of it. Like he only from this character's from this for this character's like own journey, it's all about being lost in fiction. Like even the credits of the movie are all movie credits, like references to other movies. Like he's
Hmm.
so engrossed in film and cinema and fiction that like that's all he is. And I feel like that negatively I think like that negatively reflects on people who are big film nerds and big fans of cinema and who want to make movies and that's their passion.
Hmm.
Um, and you can kind of tell me what you think about that too. But I didn't like the way that he was he was portraying like this big cinema nerd. And obviously, I'm not saying that everyone's like that because that's not the case, obviously. But I just
Hmm.
felt like overall, it felt like he was putting a lot of emphasis on the reason for all of his actions being is because he's so disconnected from reality because of fiction. So that's kind of where I stand with that. I think it's a well made. I definitely think it's a well made movie. It's for what he did with the budget, and as an indie filmmaker, I really appreciate it. Like what he did from a filmmaking perspective. I'm just
Hmm.
not. I'm not. I'm not very connected to the characters. I don't feel a lot of I can't say I feel a lot of empathy for them because I don't find myself connecting with them because I feel
Hmm.
like they're not portrayed in a way that makes sense to me. But of course, this is just from my perspective. I'm sure other people will will take this in a totally different way and think that this really accurately
Hmm.
represents what they go through. So I'm not discounting anybody else's opinion. I just don't think it's a good depiction of the people involved. But I like to know what you like about it and what you think makes it really like really stand out and work in that perspective.
Well, I mean, as far as like, I don't think it's like blaming like the movies that Matt was watching or anything like that. That's just a major part of his character. And sure, he was inspired. He could have been inspired by the movies and everything, but um, more of his really bad thoughts just came from the fact that he was bullied really badly. And of course, him being a huge cinema nerd probably, of course, got some inspiration to kill his bullies and start a school shooting in that way from like I guess movies, but mainly I don't know. I don't think it's a negative portrayal of media on that because it's Matt Johnson clearly loves cinema, and I don't think he's saying it's like cinema is irresponsible or anything like that. I think he's more just saying how cinema can affect somebody of that mindset because he was clearly going insane and he was clearly had a lot of pent up rage. And Owen, of course, when he was starting to follow along, but then eventually stopped when he realized just how far gone Matt was with it. And God, I don't know. And again, just one thing I really also appreciated about this movie is that there's like an insane amount of self awareness to it. Like one scene that really highlights what I say by that is the scene where they're having that montage of Owen getting farther away from Matt and Matt starting to do his own thing and that song's playing over it. But then the camera
Hmm.
zooms out of the computer and he's like, "That's not me. I wouldn't do this. Like this is kind of cheesy, isn't it?"
Yeah, I like
Like
that. Yeah.
yeah, there's so much self awareness to this movie, and I think for the most part, it's successful at handling some of the serious subjects and all that. It is a really hot button uh, depiction of everything, and just school shootings. That's an insane thing to make your first feature on. But
Hmm.
yeah,
In a school, no less.
yeah, exactly. And
I'm shocked they let him do it.
yeah, I know it's there's a lot of really impressive things about how they made this movie. Like I know that I think there was something about how they might have actually infiltrated the place pretending to be students and got to film a lot of stuff. I heard
Ooh,
something about that at one point.
that can't be legal.
Yeah, and I really don't know if that there's truth to that or not, because I was watching Sardonicast, and that's what they were talking about, since they
Mm.
had the composer on and the guy who played Mr. Bird from the movie on. He was a guest. He's like, yeah, I mean, there's something about them infiltrating the school and me playing a teacher not knowing what I'm doing. But
I
I don't know.
I
Go
think
ahead.
that almost adds to it, like if that's true, because that adds even another layer on top of it. Because this movie is already about kids staging.
Hmm.
So this is the movie's already about kids, like making a movie about killing their, killing their bullies, killing their peers.
Yeah.
But like within that, it's a movie we're watching about a movie being made about this. But then
Hmm.
if you put another layer on top of it of the movie itself was actually not staged, like it becomes this like this Ouroboros of like this is a movie about a movie being made about an event that's supposed to not be real, but it is, and everyone else doesn't know that it's real. But the movie itself was also made without the people knowing it was being made. So it gets very confusing in that way, but pretty cool and pretty interesting. So yeah, from that perspective, again, from the filmmaking perspective, I think it's brilliant, and I think I'll probably enjoy this more when I watch it again. I probably wasn't in like the best of. I was kind of feeling not in the best place when I watched this movie anyway. So that probably put a damper on my mood, and I wasn't able to enjoy as much of the humor and stuff. But from a filmmaking perspective, I think this is great. I especially love one thing. I don't know if you have the same sentiment, but I think the montages are some of the best I've seen in any movie. Like
Yeah.
they're so shockingly well put together, like for being montages, very simple sliced together montages, but just like the music choice and like how it's shot and how everything slows down, it just puts so much more like weight on everything, even though that that's just like that's an effect in universe for the movie. And that's what's interesting about it is like we're watching the movie they made, we're watching a movie the characters made.
Yeah.
So and that's that's probably the reason that that works, I think, is because of it is kind of pretty much a found footage movie in a way. um which the idea of Jared the cameraman is so interesting to me. Like if that, I honestly think they can make a movie just about him, about the camera guy, because
Yeah.
what's the camera guy's deal? Like we see fully what's happening with Matt and what's happening with Owen, but we don't know why Jared's a part of any of this. We don't I want to know what Jared's story is. Like
Yeah.
obviously like Jared is the actual name of the cinematographer as well. Like he actually that's his actual name, sticking with
Hmm.
the theme of everyone plays themselves. Um, but I find that this is just more of a joke, but like I find it like how would that work? Like if there was actually a school shooting and the shooter had someone filming him the whole time with like who was like who knew that this was going to happen, how how would you like does that person get also convicted as a co-conspirator? Are they part of the killings? Like
Well, I think so. I think they get let off easier because they didn't exactly kill anybody, but if they definitely would get convicted as sort of a co-conspirator in a way, and probably get some
yeah.
jail time and all
Yeah,
that.
you definitely get jail time for it. I've seen cases like this before where supposed co-conspirators still get a lot of jail time if there's a killing involved. But yeah, that's just such an interesting idea to me. Like I feel like that idea could be explored in a more serious film.
Mm-hmm.
Um but and that's the other thing about it is like I I I wish they had chosen to either make this more fun, more of a. The thing is, like, if they would have gone full on comedy and just stick to the comedy, I felt like
Mhm.
this movie wouldn't have worked as well
Yeah.
because it would have felt like it was too jokey. It was making too much of it was making just too much of a spectacle of the events
Mhm.
being shown. But if it was too serious, I don't feel like it would have been as enjoyable or easy to. I don't feel like it would have been as easy to appreciate as a movie.
Mhm.
Um, so that's kind of like that fine line there. But for me, yeah, I again everything really it's the filmmaking for me that's the best part of this movie and most impressive since they're going on a very tiny budget and everything. I
Yeah.
think from that perspective, really well made, and I especially like in that scene earlier, like right before the end of the film when right before Matt is going in to plan his to plan the shooting. He's showing Jared is filming him like creating the credit scene sequence of the
Yeah.
Dirties, and I really like the line. You might have to insert these yourself, like obviously because
Yeah.
it's a good joke, but it's also like it's a super serious line because like he's talking about like the fact that he's probably gonna if he there's a good chance he dies during the shooting. So, and he
Yeah.
recognizes that, and like it shows how completely insane he's gone. Like he doesn't
Mhm.
even care that he'll probably die in this event.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, and then obviously at the end the credits as well. They're just well done because they're it's so confusing because the credits are all references to credit sequences from other movies, but
Mhm.
because all of the people involved with the movie play themselves, it's so confusing because like oh this is like the movie they made, but it's also the movie's actual credits. So that again, it's the kind of inception there that I really think
Mhm.
is cool. Um, so yeah, I like this movie. I think I'll enjoy it more as time goes
Mhm.
on. Makes me really excited to see Blackberry to see what he did with that. That was he had more funding for that movie, right?
Yeah, BlackBerry had a pretty good budget for because I mean it's still pretty independent, but he got a lot of actors involved and there's a lot more stuff going on.
I might watch that tonight. I've really wanted to check that one out for a while.
I recommend checking out Operation Avalanche before you check out BlackBerry because it's like watching his filmmaking just progress film by film, and it's so
Is
cool.
that his next one?
Yeah,
Avalanche.
yeah, it's
Is
great.
that how many feature films has he actually done? Is it just those
Three.
three? Just those
Yeah.
three. Okay. Well, I assume he's starting to become like a much bigger name now, especially because of BlackBerry. Um,
Hmm.
I hope that gets nominated for some awards and stuff, just so he gets his name out there even more.
Yeah.
Because I feel like he's got a lot of great ideas
Hmm.
that he can make into great films. So I'm excited for that. I'm trying to think of anything. We didn't. Again, this is a kind of movie where I feel like I could write a whole short essay about because
Hmm.
there's just so much to unpack with it, with the
Yeah.
themes and like the like just the psychology of this movie. This movie is a movie about making a movie
Hmm.
about a school shooting. Like and like another scene I think about is when Matt talks about earlier in the movie like his parents don't really care about what he's doing, and he
Hmm.
goes up and he asks his mom if she thinks he's crazy, and she kind of her response is very genuine,
Hmm.
and she obviously she seems like she's a fine mother, but
Yeah.
because we know it's about to happen, it feels so much more unfortunate and kind of it's this dark moment, even though
Hmm.
it's played so straight because you know what's about to happen. Also, Jared runs away, so that's funny. It's just
Yeah.
just the idea that Jared's filming all of this too, and they barely acknowledge him, like just
Yeah.
constantly being filmed. These guys are early influencers, if you ask me.
Yeah. I was reading Eli Hayes review of this movie, and he actually made a really good point about Jared simply being the audience, basically. And
Yeah,
I really like that interpretation of it.
Yeah, I think that makes sense because um, almost it's almost like I think it's kind of why Blair Witch kind of like pioneered that the found footage genre is because it's almost like it's placing the audience into the film. Like we're
Mm,
there with the characters, and I think that's why so many people got invested in found footage,
mm,
is because it was so much more engaging, and it felt like we were a part of the mystery or part of the story.
yeah.
Um, that's more of a generalization, and this movie isn't horror, but
Mm,
that honestly, that is actually a good point though. That actually makes me wish there were more found footage movies in different genres. Because I feel
I
like
know.
if you tried, you could really make it work like this. So
Mhm.
yeah, that's something I never thought about. But yeah, you could definitely do more found footage kind of style movies, almost like kind of like mockumentaries, but those are even more like obviously higher produced on purpose. But yeah, found footage is, I think, a kind of style of filmmaking that could be used better than it is. So,
Yeah, yeah. It has a lot of potential, but a lot of directors don't know how to use it
mhm.
properly.
And a lot of people still like most people who are using it for horror, which is most people are using it for horror.
Mm,
Like, there's nothing wrong with them, and I think a lot of them are good even. But
mhm.
it's definitely an um oversaturated style now, and that's why something like even something like Skinamarink, which I think incredibly is incredibly well done. Even that starts to feel a little bit disconnected from the idea of found footage. Like
I thought Skinner. I don't. Was Skinamarink found footage? I thought that was just like supposed
it's
to be a fever
it's
dream.
it's analog horror,
Hmm.
and so I guess it's technically not found footage. But
Yeah.
the only reason I say that is because analog horror is usually connected to found footage in
Hmm.
some way. Maybe this movie probably really isn't, but that's the only reason I made the connection.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, still, my point is just like that. Found footage is really oversaturated with the horror genre,
Hmm.
and I think some people have done it really well, but I feel like it can be utilized better, and like just like this movie was.
Yeah.
So yeah, overall, I think. Is there anything else you want to say about this? Because again, like I could go into talking about other characters too, like
Hmm.
things I liked and didn't like the whole scene where they go out to shoot guns. It's like that. I think that scene is it's because it shows a good side of like Owen's character as well because
Hmm.
it's kind. I think that's a whole other part of this movie we didn't really talk about either. Is Owen is more like the secondary and protagonist
Hmm.
of the film, but his arc is completely in the opposite direction and a completely different view of these character archetypes.
Yeah.
Like whereas Matt is falling even deeper like into what he loves and into fiction.
Hmm.
Owen is trying so desperately to become more connected to reality and become more connected to others. And at first, he seems incredibly awkward. He's unsure of himself. He thinks that Matt's the only person he can really be around and
Hmm.
be friends with. And from that perspective, I really understand that. I think that makes a lot of sense. And kind of watching him try and like navigate this like social anxiety, and then eventually towards the end of the movie kind of become more confident in himself. And that's
Hmm.
what kind of, again, I think the climax of this movie is when they have their falling out, when they have their fight. um
Yeah.
because that kind of shows that's like the nail in the coffin for their split up. And also like how, again, this kind of ties back into the fact that I like how it ends inconclusively with just
Hmm.
like them confronting each other. And it's kind of, again, left up to interpretation, like how does that scenario play out.
Yeah.
Like there's really no way to tell. um and I kind of like that about that because you
Hmm.
can really view that in any way you want. We talked about this with Shame last episode as well. Like I
Hmm.
like inconclusive endings where it's left up to interpretation how the characters resolved the conflict. Um,
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe that's just me who likes that trope, but I think that works really well.
Oh, I should mention, I think the actual ending itself works, but uh, the way that Matt had planned the shooting and the way that it was executed, it kind of felt a little bit underwhelming. Because he had like so many people's names on there too, and yet he just ended up picking two. And like if he like went looking for Owen and ran into more of his bullies along the way and actually got to use all those guns he had packed, then it would have been. I feel like it would have been way more effective at actually turning into sort of a flat out horror movie in that kind of respect, or like a
Yeah, but
thriller.
but I'm but I think I'm glad it didn't do that because then I feel
Hmm.
like here's my thing. I'm glad it didn't do that because if it did, I feel like this movie would have been not. I feel like this movie would have taken a turn that would have put it in even worse light than it was already at, and it would have made Matt Johnson out to be. It would have just not been a good self portrayal for him since he's portraying himself. Like he's already planned something so terrible, and I think the reason I like how because like even this movie is all from it's an in-universe movie he's making.
Yeah.
And when he's planning the shooting, you see him go in, he's putting the GoPros up on the wall, and he
Hmm.
even like he spends a good chunk of time trying to get one up on the wall in just the right position that it will capture him getting shooting his first victim, his first bully. And he
Yeah.
spends all that time, trying to make sure it's perfectly aligned and where,
Hmm.
where he'll stand when he takes the first shot. And then when it finally happens, it's in a completely wrong spot. The camera is just getting the edge of
Yeah.
where he's actually doing it. And yeah, well, you can chalk that up to just being like, oh, that's a budgetary restraint. I
Hmm.
understand that. Um, I think that adds to I think that adds to the idea of this. Like he's still a guy just planning this he's planning a horrible thing.
Hmm.
He's still gonna make errors. It's not like he's gonna if everything was perfect and he got to shoot everyone on his list, I don't think it would have been realistic. And I don't
Yeah.
think
No.
and then it would have been harder and it would also been harder to resolve the movie with him confronting Owen as well. With him
Hmm.
just shooting the two guys and then chasing after Owen, I think it kind of shows where it doesn't make Matt out to be just like a guy so disconnected from reality that he's basically just become evil.
Yeah.
Because like at the end he still wants to go see his friend because that he Owen's the one person who was always important to him because he actually cared about him.
Hmm.
Um or at least that's what he thought from his perspective. And I think that's a stronger ending than
Hmm.
just him going out on a rampage and killing everyone and doing that. It
Hmm.
would have been probably a cooler spectacle filmmaking wise, but I
Yeah.
don't. I think it would have probably made me dislike dislike them even more because it just feels just even just like the people making the movie. It would have felt inappropriate to me to to
Hmm.
to go all the way through with it because then it just feels like it feels almost schlocky, and
Hmm.
I don't think that would have been a good look for a movie that's primarily a comedy.
Hmm.
So that's just from my perspective. I think they made the right decision to do it. I know it was probably mostly because of budgetary restraints, but I think it's a better movie for it.
Hmm.
Um, but that's just from my perspective. We'll probably, not everyone's gonna agree.
Yeah.
Other people think that I'm sure you probably think, and other people probably think it would have been a better film overall if they would have gone all the way. If they would have not take, they would have taken the risk. And
Hmm.
I could respect that, but I also just don't think it was the right. I don't think it would have been the right decision. So I like the direction they took with it. I like how it turned out in the end, and I think I'll probably like this movie even more when I watch it later. So yeah, I like the direction it took. I think it's a good movie. Anything else you want to bring up before we close out here?
Um, I don't know. I just love it. I will admit some of the side actors that they run into are really bad. Like there's some pretty bad performances.
Yeah, you can't
Like
win them all.
Yeah, not it's not like a flawless movie to me. It's there's a lot of sillier aspects. The bullies are just one-dimensional bullies in the end of the day. It's kind
Yeah,
of
I don't
funny
like
how
that
they're
either, but
yeah, they're always also like they're pretty much always mic'd up as well, which is a little bit unrealistic. But there is one joke about it, where Owen isn't mic'd up and Matt keeps yelling at him to put his mic on. I
yeah.
thought that was so. There's like again, it's that self-awareness, and I really love it. I just got to
Hmm.
say that.
The self awareness is definitely adds a lot as well.
Hmm.
Um, there's one thing I wanted to bring up about that is like, um, I think actually, so the one side actor who I think I think is really funny is like the teacher towards the start of
Hmm.
the movie. And then
Yeah,
when they're probably my favorite scene is when they're showing him their cut of the movie of him
yeah,
getting shot. It's when Owen looks so uncomfortable and Matt looks so enthusiastic, and their
yeah.
teacher just looking on, just like
Like,
honestly, like pretty bad teacher, all things considered. Like
mhm,
when everyone was watching their movie in the class, it's like, come on, man, step up. These kids are absolutely like that's the one scene that really just made me like not like the characters because like everyone in the class is just so rude. Like even I
mhm.
don't know people to be that incredibly rude. Like that's a
I think
little
that was.
bit
I
like
think a lot of that was probably a live reaction. That's the funniest thing.
yeah, it probably was. It's just like it's like I don't know. I didn't like that whole scene of them watching the movies, but
Hmm.
whatever. Um, you know, that's that's kind of a part of like why they're making the Dirties too and stuff is the initial reaction. So
Yeah.
I think it gets more interesting as it goes on. But yeah, I like the movie. I gave it a 6 out of 10, I believe,
Hmm.
and I think you gave it a 7, right?
Yeah, this is a really solid 7 for me. It's not flawless, but I absolutely love it.
Yeah, I might bump it up later on. I feel like I can appreciate more of it just kind of thinking about it more, and I feel like if I
Hmm.
watch it again, I would have more enjoyment of it. Even if I think some things are done poorly, or if I think some things are done better, but yeah, I enjoyed it. I would give it a watch again. I'm excited to see more by Matt Johnson, especially Blackberry. I'm just interested in that story in the first
Yeah.
place. And is that more of a serious? It's a serious biopic, right? It's not a comedy.
Yeah, it has a lot of comedic elements, and like if you're a huge nerd like I am, like there's a lot of references to video games and this other
Mm,
technology stuff and just early 2000s technology. So it's very comedic, but it gets very serious too. That's what I love about
good, good. Better than hot Cheetos then, so that's good.
it. Yeah.
I've heard that's a stinker, but
I don't plan on watching it anytime soon. I
no,
can say that
me
much.
neither. And I like biopics, but yeah, that feels like one I might try and avoid for a while.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, pretty good couple films today is so we're really trying hard to get our friend June to be on the podcast because
Hmm.
that would be funny as heck. But
Yeah.
she's not helping us out because we want her to pick a movie for us to watch, and apparently she's not very good at it. So
It's just gonna end up being like Jurassic World or something, I swear.
I'm still baffled that she just went through all those movies on Letterboxd. I was like, why? Why are you binging these?
I could never. I could never.
And yeah, I kind of want to now because I know it's the 30th anniversary this year, so of the original film.
Maybe Jurassic Park, but I would never go through and watch all of them. Like that just sounds painful.
I want to because I have watched them all before, and I remember. Of course, I love the first movie like most people do, and I
Hmm.
like a couple of the newer ones. But overall, that series just like it just in one ear, in one eye, and out the other, I guess.
Yeah.
Um, but I would like to rewatch those just to kind of re-examine them and why they were so forgettable or so bad. But
Hmm.
anyway, that's a story for another day. I hope to be on a more weekly schedule from now on. I was doing a lot of school stuff, so that's why I was kind of we didn't have anything the past couple weeks. But hopefully I'll be on a better schedule from now on, and hopefully my sound quality won't just continue to devolve. But We'll see. You've been good the whole time at least, so
Oh
that's
yeah, you've been good the whole time too. I haven't had any cutouts yet,
all
but
right.
I guess we'll have to see how the recording looks, I
Yeah.
guess.
Hopefully it's good. That if we have our first episode with no massive issues, that'd be incredible.
Hmm.
Since the first episode, which that episode probably went flawless because we were both in good spots and close to each other. So,
Exactly.
but yeah, those are our films for the day. They're fun. This is a good episode, I think. Um, Starting to get loud out in the hall, so this seems like a good time to end.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, hopefully we'll be back sometime next week. I don't I don't know if I'm gonna nail down a day that we record yet, but
Mhm.
I'll start thinking about that, and I'm also gonna hopefully start looking into Spotify more in the future. I'm
Mhm.
pretty low on time and resources, so I don't have like it's not like a major priority for me, but it is. The episodes will still go up on YouTube as I get them done. So,
Mhm.
and this one should be pretty easy to edit, and I'll, I'm gonna have a field day making a thumbnail. Um, so
Oh
yeah,
wow.
good times, good times. All right. Thank you for joining me today on this episode 4 of the podcast.
Absolutely.
And we will see everybody next time. Bye.
Bye.